Hello everyone. Thank you again for joining Metaverse Summit Roadshow, which is a series of online interviews, panels, and also offline meetups with different project builders, with different entrepreneurs and experts around the topic of Metaverse and beyond. So today we are really happy to have Inder, who is the CEO and co-founder of Pixelynx. So could you tell us who you are and what is Pixelynx?
Yeah, great to be here. So Pixelynx is a new venture we launched with myself, Deadmau5, Richie Horton, and a number of other iconic veterans from the music and gaming industry. Really, as we were thinking about the future of music and how it will evolve in the metaverse and in Web3, we got really excited about the potential of blurring the lines between blockchain, gaming, and music. So Pixelynx essentially is a venture aimed at one of the first things we're launching a platform that lets fans discover interactive, playable NFTs that are all rooted in music. And that's being built on the Niantic Lightship ARDK. So the mobile application will come out in Q2 this year. And then we have a desktop game that also comes out at the end of the year, which connects the dots between the two. So artists can launch their own virtual worlds, they can host virtual concerts, and then essentially monetize through NFTs, social tokens, and a number of other fan engagement mechanics. So really blurring the lines between music, gaming, and blockchain is our focus.
Fantastic. So you're not only building the bridge between the three elements of like gaming, music, and the virtual world, right? You are also kind of using and leveraging all different blocks of technology that are available to kind of create not only your product, but also encourage the other product, incentivize them, or even invest in them, right? So could you tell us more about this side of things?
Yeah, so the main focus of ours is the link between, with the mobile game, it's the link between the real world and the digital world. So with the AR application, what we can do is get fans, to go to festivals, go to occasions that might have a connection to unlock these experiences. Fun part is when we launched the game, they both share the same entry system. So everything you in the real world is visible in the desktop and mobile game as well. So it's really just a shared system for NFT inventory that can utilize across both ecosystems. And again, working with incredible partners, we're working with Niantic, as I mentioned, Forte, one of our back partners for the side of things. We're working with Ready Player Me on the avatar piece. It really is a combination of many metaverse kind of native products, I guess you could say, and then a lot of new tools that we're creating internally.
So referring back to what you said, you mentioned that Pixelynx is using Niantic SDK, right? So in the world of Metaverse, there are different visions, there are different approaches. There is this Facebook, or let's say Meta's Horizon version. There's also Niantic's AR linking online with offline version. How did you choose kind of to collaborate with Niantic on this AR version of Metaverse?
Yeah, well, we've been experimenting as a team in AR for many years. We built one of the first ever games, for example, on Snapchat, maybe 5-6 years ago, I think it was. And so, we've always been really excited about the potential of AR as an entry point, I think, to get people into thinking about interactive formats and playable experiences. I think the beauty of mobile and AR is that it's so accessible. Some of these other formats, which we're also very excited about and is part of our roadmap, the target audience is can be a little bit smaller compared to mobile. So for us, the starting point with AR was just a very natural, obvious fit. And once we had the Niantic SDK or ARDK was available for public use, it was a very natural decision to say, well, we want to be one of the first people to build on this, because there's some incredible technology there that will just make the process much easier. So yeah, it was a very natural choice for many reasons. But, of course, physical events and physical experiences are still very important in music, and with mobile and AR, it's a way for us to connect the dots between the two in a way that maybe virtual worlds wouldn't necessarily be able to ever deliver the same experience. So for us, it's that's step one, to get people into the ecosystem. The target audience is much larger, so we can really teach people about NFTs and the potential of this technology before we then launch the desktop game and kind of use it as an ecosystem of products that work together.
Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about AR today, we're talking about maybe having this handwear, either iPhone, like phone, smartphone, or tablet, iPad, to have this mix of online and offline world. So Apple actually just announced that they're gonna delay kind of the AR glasses. So what do you think is the near future of development of AR hardware? Is it gonna be a hurdle for this kind of AR-based content, or is it gonna actually explode sometime very soon and then encourage this format of content?
Yeah, it's hard to say, because I think, we kind of see the snippets, and we've seen it with VR. I think, on the one hand, VR, the assumptions of the VR market were meant to explode many, many years ago, according to the people who were forecasting about the industry. And so, we have to be a little bit pragmatic that the adoption of this technology may not be as quick as people assume, let's say, for the next phase of hardware. But what we know right now is mobile AR experiences are engaging. People can, love filters, whether that's on Instagram or Snapchat. So I think, the mobile, it's here right now. We know that's really what people, fans and consumers are interested in. I think the future for sure is going to go closer towards the interface being more connected to, the human, whether that's through glasses or whether it's mixed reality or something in between. But it's very hypothetical at the moment. I don't think there's any proof points to kind of show where that's going. But, internally, the team is very optimistic that AR glasses will become, a key part of how people engage with this content, and, may well be one of the interesting stepping stones to driving, mainstream adoption of VR as well. But I think it's definitely coming. It's just whether that's within the next 2 years or the next 5 is anyone's guess. I'm sure Apple and some of the other players will have a different viewpoint on it internally, but it's hard to forecast on it without seeing too much.
Yeah, everybody's looking forward to it anyway, right? Since the kind of the VR AR hype in 2016, everybody was looking into Magic Leap and waiting for Apple glasses. So it's gonna come. It just depends on the timing, right? So
completely. And I think the main thing is, as long as the formats are kind of transferable, we're still building towards the same future, I think is the main thing. There are different design considerations that you take into account, but as long as the formats kind of are interoperable at that level, then you'd assume the transition will be more straightforward. I think the biggest challenge with VR, for example, is amazing technology, but the amount of content creators to produce VR content just wasn't really there yet. So it took a lot of time for the content to catch up with the hardware, and it's still not necessarily at scale. I think AR already is there. People can start designing AR experiences relatively quickly with multiple different tools, whether it's from Adobe or from Meta or any other platforms.
Definitely. So if we go back to the topic, maybe from the business side, so the app that you are creating, the product, is actually based on kind of the democratized creator economy, even if it is built upon the community of some maybe well-known artists already, right? So you are also adding kind of gamified elements to the music world, linking every different thoughts. So could you tell us more around the product design, and then how you kind of rethink the notion of game and of the music monetization model with the new technology of NFT and everything?
Yeah, it's super exciting. I mean, we're looking at a whole new way of thinking about music internally. And what we've done is, the team that we've brought together are all veterans from the gaming industry. Many of them worked on Guitar Hero at the earliest stage. One of our chief strategy officers and head of innovation, John, he patented a lot of the technology behind Guitar Hero and sold that to Activision. So we have a team that has built some of the early music games and innovations. And as we think about this new frontier, we think about it very much as a new format. Music is, generally speaking, a very ethereal thing. You can't usually see it or touch it. It just exists kind of, as audio. And so for us, one of the first steps was, how do we bring physicality to music? How do we make people look at this piece of music in a different way that's physical? And through AR, that's one of our key approaches. So we've gone through multiple design iterations to think about different ways of this. And where we landed was stem files, we think, are some of the most interesting ideas within music. So a stem file is, you can take a song and it could be broken down into the bass line, the vocals, the melodies, and so on. And what we do is we break the song down into these fragments and let fans combine and build them together. So you could imagine, you know, let's say Lego or Roblox, and if it was combined with music, what would happen if I was able to piece together these physical objects that were infused with music? And so that's really where we've gone from approaches from a design perspective. Is, you know, the music is provided by the creators, by the musicians in fragments, and fans have this process of discovery to find the fragments that they want, and then piece them together to create these sculptural remixes based on the music that they've discovered. So there's a fine interplay between the fan created content and then the IP. And so that's super interesting. In terms of the business model, you know, there's a lot of work to be done on that. I think music and gaming has never scaled because of the business models don't really necessarily work with traditional licensing. So I think with blockchain and NFTs, what we have is the ability to redefine these business models, because, you know, artists have full transparency around how their content is being used. They can get paid almost immediately. And so that's given us this new tool set to essentially renegotiate and rethink what a business model should look like, and how this will really drive new revenue streams for the music industry. So, you know, there's a lot of different parts to it, but I think, you know, blockchain is fundamentally one of the most important driving scale and revenue for creators, whether that's fans or artists. You know, and it works really fun in two ways, because the artist gets to see how their content is being used in real time, and that revenue from that. Fans can also start to create their own remixes and sell these to other fans, and sell these mini games that have been made on the back of other people's music. And so it creates this interesting loop where the creator and the IP holder both get an opportunity to monetize. But all of this, you know, fundamentally goes back to the IP holders. But, you know, fans equally incentivized to participate and remix and create.
Yeah, that's what NFT has unlocked, right? The new kind of business model that is revolutionizing the traditional royalty-based and big studio, big musician houses based model, right? So regarding the technology that is being used to build this whole product, maybe you also mentioned when we were talking last time, there's machine learning and AI and generative content in it. So we already see these kind of use cases in music and in gaming, but what is the approach that you're having?
Yeah, so there's some things I couldn't go deep on because they're related to kind of patent applications that we're making, but generally speaking, we look at AI and machine learning and procedural techniques as ways to speed up the creation process. And, you know, for many and want to go down the route of having to create their own virtual world because they just don't have the resource necessarily, let's say, to create the 3D content or to create the assets. So for us to be leveraging machine learning and AI and all of the other tools are there to really help artists speed up that process. You know, you could imagine it like, what would happen if you were taking the idea of building a WordPress website or a Squarespace website, but applied that to virtual worlds, where it was very easy for you to quickly kind of piece together the design styles, the different brand DNA pillars that you have, and then get 70% there with the creation of what you need. And then the rest of it is customized. So for us, AI is used as a way to speed up the creation process, to help artists, you know, very quickly start visualizing the ideas that they might have in a quicker way. And so, you know, it's about automation and giving, I guess, fans as well the tools to start to become creators, as opposed to, you know, focusing very exclusively on a group of people that may have to have had 3D design skills. So it's a blend of different techniques, but, you know, always there really just to speed up the creative process, as opposed to focusing on the techniques taking over everything, and it just you kind of lose the human touch. So it's a fine blend between the two. So it's rewarding, but at the same time efficient.
Yeah, definitely should be a good balance between both, right? Because if you generate 10,000 apes, no offense to any ape holders, but with the simple algorithm, it kind of kills the creativity that we wanted to use the technology to do, right? So that's the very interesting aspect. Also want to mention maybe around the community. So I assume the community you have is for now crypto community, and maybe in the future you're more maybe want to onboard music fans who are not yet in Web3, who are not familiar with the NFTs or back behind, right?
Sure, I think it's a fine balance. You know, we kind of launch our public marketing campaigns in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and that'll be one of the first kind of pieces of public comms to really build community. But you know, for us, we're not a blockchain company in terms of like our presentation. Even though blockchain is so central to everything that we do, we're really trying to abstract away all the complexities of blockchain and NFTs. So the idea is not to lead with the narrative of NFTs or the narrative of blockchain. It's just a feature set, and it's just part of the functionality that will empower creators. And for us, the narrative is more about, this is a way to be empowered as a creative person, whether you're a musician or a fan, and it will unlock new ways to participate within your favorite genres and with your favorite artists. So for us, the biggest challenge here is abstracting away all of that, the complexities of blockchain, not presenting it as a crypto project. It just uses blockchain. And I think that's, you know, we position it much more focused at a mainstream audience. You know, we experiment a lot with different ways to engage our fans, you know, whether that's through deadmau5's channels and educating his fan base about what blockchain is. And, you know, it's a bit, I think the whole industry has to kind of think about the language and the communication that we use, because clearly in gaming, there's a mixed opinion on NFTs, and even in music as well. Many fans don't like it. They think it's a cash grab and they don't really understand the value of it. So this is why I think the most important thing for us is we need to lead with the value proposition as opposed to the jargon. So NFTs is, you know, it'll be referenced in what we talk about, but it's like secondary to the purpose and the reason why it's there. So, you know, I think, but these are there'll be early lessons for everyone to kind of go through in this process, and there'll be many growing pains, I think, as we, you know, talk to this about with our fan base, with a mainstream fan base that may not be kind of crypto native, to explain, you know, the reason why it exists and why it's actually going to make their experience better. So huge, I think, a challenge that we face as a global community of creators and builders in the space.
Yeah, that's a challenge not only for you guys, but also for a lot of different other projects and companies. But also when we are talking about gamers, we're not talking about one community, right? The peers of, let's say, Pokemon Go is not the same crowd as of some other big AAA games or communities, right? So
completely
only taking into consideration maybe when you're building a product, it's building an experience that fits your target community and to make everything fun, right? So
what we look at is, you know, we get really excited with streetwear culture. I think the overlap of music and streetwear is really the sweet spot for us as a company. And, you know, in that culture, reselling is already well established. People understand the idea of flipping, and so sometimes NFTs can be seen in the same light as, I think, very comparable. So that's really where we focus in on, is, you know, closer to the hypebeast streetwear culture and trying to create the overlap between music and those worlds. And you know, then I think there's already a deeper understanding of primary and secondary markets and all of those kind of mechanics already tied into the way people behave. So that's really where our focus is in terms of our starting point is, you know, in terms of audience demographic, it's music, streetwear, and then gaming kind of come together to, you know, really help us define the target.
True. I didn't think of that point, but it's true that the value proposition and the notion of collectible already exist in the physical ownership of product, right? Not only NFT that's emerging today. So regarding that, like creating fun experiences and products, I also want to get back to the topic of investment. So you are creating also an incubation lab that is fundraising for different other products, not only for you, but also for the other entrepreneurs and builders, right? So could you tell us like how you select and how you gather this crowd to support this project?
Yeah, so there's a few things that we haven't announced yet, which will be announced in the next month or so, and it's super exciting. The vision for us to set that up was, you know, very, I mean, the rationale was a very easy one for us to get to, because we believe there's many ways to experience music in the metaverse, and we're just gonna, we will only solve one of those ways. We're not trying to solve every possible angle. You know, so the virtual concerts is such a specific thing on its own right that you need a team dedicated to really think about that in its own context. So we are launching labs specifically to focus on investing and supporting many of these other projects that will create new formats and new ways to experience music in the metaverse and through interactive experiences. And what we offer is capital. We connect them to many of our other partners who can help with token design and legal compliance and some of the other bigger challenges they face. But then we also provide them with access to IP. So that's a hugely important piece of ours, and a quick way for many of these startups to gain traction, improve product market fit, is by leveraging music and celebrity IP, which we have in abundance. So that's one of the key pillars. And then in the long term, the aim really is, with labs, we create interoperability between many of these projects. So an artist, you know, we don't want to monopolize the space and say this is the only place music will be experienced in the metaverse. I think it's the wrong approach, because like many of these platforms need to exist because they will approach it from different ways. But what we can do is create ways for our systems to work together. So if an artist buys an NFT in our world, well, they can also utilize it in one of our portfolio companies' platforms. And that's really what we built labs to do, is to help artists then have at least an ecosystem to design a more cohesive strategy, where they could come to Pixelynx and say, it's amazing, I want to launch my virtual world experience, and I want to launch my next album through the formats that you're proposing, but I also want my fans to be able to access this musical sticker over here so that they can use it on Discord or Facebook or anything else, or they can use a digital merch from one of the other partners. And this allows us to basically connect the dots between multiple layers of the value chain and give artists the ability to design. You know, what we say is the most cohesive strategy for an artist is to then have at least a stack that they can look at and say, this is how I'm going to design my next project around the ecosystem that we've created.
Definitely great points. And in comparison with like the traditional IP empire that we've been witnessing during last decades, let's say Marvel's, Disney, their franchise model, right? So they built this huge IP empire. If you want to print it on the clothes, okay, pay. If you want to bring it, if you want to enter into Disneyland, okay, pay. So that's the traditional model, right? So what exactly would you imagine as the new IP model? Meaning that if this personnel become famous, how can the other commerce, the luxury brands, the individuals like me and you, and the other creators can be part of it?
I mean, it's a really fascinating topic, and I think there's so many different routes to exploring it. I think traditional legacy brands will probably continue operating the way that they're operating for the foreseeable future, because they won't just flip their business model overnight to focus on decentralization and NFTs at the level that the industry is moving at. But I think the future is, it seems to me that co-investment from this fans is going to be a big part of this. And so let's say an artist is launching a new album, or they're launching anything in between, being able to get their fans buy-in, and then the fans earning royalties from it, or being able to gain special privileges from being part of that IP creation process. It seems to be something that's really exciting for music. There is a growing movement of kind of independent artists, and it's been happening for many years. And the roles that labels play is incredibly important. I think many people say they're trying to get rid of labels. I don't think that narrative makes any sense, because labels are part of the infrastructure. They provide value in many ways that an independent artist will never be able to achieve if they don't have the ecosystem. But what we'll see more and more, I think, is the relationship between the IP creator and the fan. And we're seeing it in many ways, with new NFT projects, giving kind of Creative Commons or the rights are passed to the NFT holder. So then the owner of the NFT can then monetize it in ways that maybe the original IP holder didn't even imagine. And that's a really fascinating paradigm, because it taps into this kind of growing movement of a creator economy of user-generated content, and starts to create this, I think, quite an empowering ecosystem. So there's a number of different I think case studies that we can look at that start to show how this movement it will grow. But yeah, I think the relationship between IP owner and consumer will evolve to be more almost akin to like a partnership, as opposed to just a consumption-based relationship. And that's something that I think is super exciting. But there needs to be then platforms that allow people to then experience and leverage these NFTs in ways that they might not have been able to before. So this is user-generated content tools and so on. But yeah, I think it's to me, I'd summarize it in that way, where right now it's a very transactional relationship between IP holders and consumers, and it's kind of one way most of the time. I think in the future it becomes more of a relationship where it's IP owner and the consumer is more of like a partner in the development and journey of the IP kind of evolving. And again, multiple examples of different companies that we're partnered with or collaborating with, that's kind of seeing a similar future where the relationship is more of a two-way street now, and the ecosystem grows, not just the revenue for the single owner of the IP. So that it will require people to rethink their whole business model in some cases, because one thing you have to do then is you have to leave money on the table for the ecosystem to be able to participate and to be able to generate revenue themselves from buying into this IP, not necessarily from the viewpoint of it being an investment, but from the viewpoint of it being a new piece of content that can then be remixed and repurposed and then remonetized. And so it still requires a creative mindset to it, not necessarily just like viewing it as a stock. So yeah, I think there's multiple different routes that it will explode in, but that's one that I think many people are excited about because it's incredibly empowering.
Yeah, definitely. So when we're talking about the two-way road, right? We're also talking about how to curate the content, how to make the newcomers, or let's say a nerdful person, discover artist or community or content. So in Web 0.0, we can say, okay, maybe on the street, you see some posters. In Web 2, let's say, the Spotify's, the TikToks, they're gonna learn your habits, preferences, they're gonna recommend, maybe based on already some large community based algorithm, they can recommend the hottest things on the community as well, right? So what is the future curation and discovery for content?
It's a good question. I think many of the same ideas will continue to pass through. We are a data-driven society, and the power of like personalized targeting is not going to just disappear, I think. So people will find ways to bring personalization into Web3, where there's still anonymity, but understanding people's user behaviors. And I'm speaking to multiple projects that are actually exploring ways to look at people's wallet addresses to identify the kind of consumer that wallet owner is, the types of projects that they're more excited about, and then build up a kind of social graph, for example, around their interests. And these are things that already exist and people are developing. So I think many of those ideas will continue to kind of pass through. The business models may change slightly to be less about advertising and more about consent. And so if I want someone to be able to target me as a user in Web3, I can earn from that, or I can get rewarded for my pass over of my data. And so, those are some ideas I think many people are talking about. But I feel like community will be one of the most important things. Twitter clearly plays a huge role right now in the success of many projects, and it's really important that the founders and the teams behind these projects are active and engaging. But we seem to be moving into this new era where I think community becomes the curators, and it's people who buy into these projects who end up becoming the ambassadors of it, and through whether it's through their profile picture or anything in between, those end up becoming these ways for you to identify interesting new projects that you might want to look into or be part of. But I think the wallet address seems to be seems to present an opportunity for curation in ways that I don't think have been fully discovered just yet. Airdrops is a huge one. Many people now fish and spend most of their time just looking to get free airdrops, and it's obviously incredibly successful for some. But I think there is definitely something in there around how your wallet address will link back to identifying new projects. And I'll give you an example. I just made this up on the spot, but I'm sure someone in the next year will launch a subscription list where you can just put your wallet address in, type the types of projects that you're most excited about, and you'll just receive airdrops based upon projects that you find are interesting. I mean, these paradigms I would be surprised if that doesn't exist within the next year, because that becomes the way for someone to basically send you an asset and for you to then dig into it further. So it's going to be a blend. Community, social media will continue to play a role, but the relationship between airdrops and that as a mechanism for people to learn about a new project, I think will be huge. Everyone loves to receive free things, so that I think there's going to be something in there. But we'll reach a point where then it will just become spam, and then it's like kind of just receiving junk email, and then your wallet address will become like your original Hotmail account, and you decide you don't want it anymore or you're going to have to move some stuff over because one of them is just full of rubbish, and the other one is going to be more curated towards what you want. So I think there's definitely similarities between early newsletters and wallet addresses becoming a way for people to kind of sign up to projects, and then they'll dig in and explore further. But it's definitely going to be a combination of everything we've already seen, just slightly reimagined.
Yeah, we actually talked also with Ryan Gill about digital identities across different metaverses. And yes, if I want to ditch my old identity because too much music, I can just go for another identity where I am totally an otaku or different personality, right?
Completely. Well, Ryan is one of the smartest people in the space. I think he's always got some very incredible viewpoints on the future, and most of the time he sees what's coming probably 3-4 years before it's actually here. So I would probably trust his opinion very, very well.
Well, we are very honored to have all those great speakers, including you and Ryan, in the Metaverse Roadshow. And the random idea you just gave, it actually can be an entrepreneurial idea, right? So makes sense that you are launching this labs to support all the different ideas and projects.
If someone wants to build that idea, kind of get in touch. We'll help support and fund it. I think, why not?
Definitely. So a lot of interesting topics, not only like content, community curation, identity, and everything. So what is actually the most exciting vision for you in the upcoming years inside of the metaverse?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different pillars to it that are exciting. In our team, we get excited about multiple things. We've got the veterans from the music industry who are really excited about the future business models and what this will mean for their artists in the future. Personally, I get really excited about how the experience will evolve. I think smart contracts and virtual worlds are a whole new canvas for creativity. And when we create the tools for artists to really think about how they can leverage these new tools, specifically smart contracts, I think also virtual world, they go hand in hand. Once we get the tools in place for artists to really think about how this is a new canvas for them, we will see a level of creativity that I think will be one of the most fascinating evolutions of art in our time, because now art doesn't need to be static anymore. You know, it can evolve based upon parameters encoded in a smart contract, based on community behavior, based on climate change, based on anything in between. And I think that just opens up a whole new way to layer storytelling into pieces of content and art. And so that to me is what I get really excited about. I think the format of content and music and media is going to evolve, and it will just open up new ways for people to immerse themselves in their favorite pieces of content and culture. And that's what I get most excited about, because I think it's really, it's the next dimension. It's like a renaissance in some ways of artistic creativity.
Yes, and the way you are doing this project of Pixelynx is also kind of community-based, right? Different profiles from gaming, from music, everything. So fantastic, great job. And looking forward to future news, the launch also of Pixelynx. I'm sure that it's gonna be huge.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Thank you, Inder.
All right, take care.